There are no Israelis being held hostage in Gaza following yesterday's return of the body of Mahmoud. That later. But first, some major developing news. The U.S. is building up its military presence in the region as Trump and his advisors weigh all possible actions to take against the Islamic regime in Iran. More on this from ILT.
Abraham Lincoln and it's
October 7th have been found and identified and returned to Israel for burial. Vili was killed in battle during the Hamas attacks and abducted into Gaza. His recovery ends the final unresolved case from that day. ILTV's India Naftali is at Hostages Square with all the details. India?
Thank you, Kalev. I'm standing here at Hostages Square. It's a place that's become a symbol of pain, waiting, and hope for more than 2 years. I've been reporting from the square since the first weeks after October 7th, and today, for the very first time in over a decade, Israel has no remaining hostages in Gaza. People are removing their yellow hostage pins. Many vowed to keep them on until everyone came home, and that moment finally came with the return of Ron Gvili. The Israel Defense Forces confirmed Monday that the remains of 24-year-old police officer Ron Gvili have been identified and returned to Israel for burial. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum called him first to enter, last to return. On October 7th, Ron Gvili rushed into battle, fighting at the entrance to Kibbutz Alumim until his ammunition ran out. The recovery operation for his body, named Courageous Heart, was based on precise intelligence that his body was buried in a cemetery in eastern Gaza City. New details released by the Shin Bet revealed that the breakthrough came after a Palestinian Islamic Jihad operative was captured and interrogated last month. He admitted to moving Gvili's body between locations and provided information that led to the exact burial site. Forensic teams examined nearly 250 bodies before identifying Gvili's remains. Prime Minister Netanyahu announced his return yesterday.
אני שמח לבשר לאזרחי ישראל, לעם ישראל, כפי שבישרתי עכשיו, למשפחת גבילי, כוחותינו מצאו את רני, והוא כרגע בדרך הביתה. זה הישג בלתי רגיל של מדינת ישראל. אנחנו הבטחנו, אני הבטחתי, להחזיר את כולם. החזרנו את כולם, עד האחרון שבהם. רני, גיבור ישראל, נכנס ראשון, יצא אחרון, הוא שב הביתה. הישג כביר לצבא ההגנה לישראל, למדינת ישראל, וגם לאזרחי ישראל, שאתם נתתם לנו את הגיבוי להשלים את המלאכה. רני חוזר הביתה.
Now that he is home, all of Israel is reacting, particularly his family, who has long awaited him.
I want to say thank you to President Trump and Witkoff and Kushner and Bibi Netanyahu, of course. They promised me to bring my son home, and they bring him home.
Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir personally called Ron Gvili's family. And the military also released video from the moment soldiers found Gvili's body. They stood together, sang, and said a prayer. Kalev, this may be one of the last times I speak to you from Hostages Square. Just talking to the people here in Israel, there is a huge sense of joy and relief, but also sorrow that Ron Gvili couldn't come home alive. It's been a huge honor and privilege to be able to report on this historic moment. Back to you.
Well, India, thank you for last time from Hostages Square. And with the return of the final Israeli hostage, Ron Gvili, to Israel, the Rafah crossing can now be opened, and Trump's phase 2 of his Gaza plan can commence. Israel has agreed to a partial reopening of the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt, but said it will continue to monitor remotely all people and goods passing through it. Speaking with the Axios news site, President Trump praised Hamas for what he said was its cooperation in helping locate the body of Ron Gvili. But he also stressed the terror group must now lay down its weapons in accordance with the U.S. brokered peace agreement, saying now we have to disarm Hamas like they promised. A senior U.S. official also told reporters that those Hamas terrorists who agree to lay down their arms will be granted amnesty as per the peace deal, and that reconstruction of the Gaza Strip will only begin with the demilitarization of the territory. The official added that Israel will be expected to carry out a full withdrawal from Gaza as that process takes place, though Israeli officials have said they expect that would only happen after Hamas is fully disarmed. Well, joining us now for more on that and other issues is Reserves Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Doron Avital, former commander of IDF Special Forces and Reserves IDF Lieutenant Colonel Avital Leibovich, now director of the AJC Israel, and she's a former IDF spokesperson to the international media. Avital, let me start with you. The return of Ran Gvili, a sense of closure for Israel, but in also opening a new chapter for the country as it deals with what's happening in Gaza. So I just want to address to you, and looking forward now, what is Israel going to have to be especially focused on in Gaza now that the hostages are back?
Right. So obviously yesterday was a day full of joy, sadness too, because Ran Gvili unfortunately returned in a coffin, but a little bit of satisfaction of the fact that all the hostages are back and there are no more hostages in Gaza since 2014. Now, having said that, we are looking at the next phase, which is right around the corner. And if I'm reading Trump's peace plan, demilitarization, it's one of the points. Basically, what it says is that all military, terror, and offensive infrastructure, including tunnels and weapons productions, will be destroyed and not rebuilt. And the big question that now in Israel is being discussed is who will be responsible for that demilitarization, because obviously the big price for Hamas would be the rebuilding, the renovating of Gaza. And that will not happen until this part of disarming takes place. It is unclear at this point who will lead the disarming, because we know that in Kiryat Gat, in the center, which the American CENTCOM has opened, there are representatives from 27 different countries. So far, until this point, none of these representatives of countries has agreed and said, we will be boots on the ground, we will be the ones disarming Hamas. So without this critical point, I don't see how we will make any progress on the second phase.
Well, Doron, I want you to pick up on that. And also, there is a sense coming now from some of the U.S. officials, not from President Trump, that perhaps they will be trying to do a thing where there'll be some kind of partial disarming, or the process of demilitarization will begin, and Israel will then also be expected, for example, to start already pulling back from the so-called yellow line in Gaza, maybe, and this could be problematic for Israel. So how, especially on that aspect, how should it react to, say, that proposal?
So we have to understand the logic that they are trying to employ here, to apply here, the logic of Trump. We call it in military lingo, it's like a buffer logic. You just set a constraint one after the other. And of course, the second constraint, the first constraint was live hostages, the end of the war. And the second, in terms of the demilitarization, will be, first of all, the happy weaponry. Because, once happy weaponry is deposited wherever in Egypt, whatever would be the case, then you might distinction between who is a policeman and who is a military man starts to fade. So I think that's the way they think about the logic, the Trump administration, when they talk about this partial resolution of the constraints as they go. In the end, of course, we have to see the tunnels dismantled. For us, this is critical, because you have to understand, if there was an operative surprise, I'm not talking about the intelligence debacle, but in terms of a surprise was the fact that you have this different layer of combat that you have to handle with the tunnels. So we can't have those tunnels existing in Gaza City, in all those areas, and dismantling them is part of this demilitarization of Gaza. So happy weaponry, dismantling of the tunnels, and then what's the next phase is, of course, connected to who would be the force on the ground that will take control on the civil life, on the security of the citizens and so on. And this would be tricky for Israel and tricky in general.
Right, that's a big question. I want to move on to Iran now. Avital, I won't try to ask you to read President Trump's mind, which is very difficult, if not impossible. But just based on the latest comments we're hearing out of Washington and Tehran, do you think we're leaning toward action or to some kind of negotiation?
Well, to predict something that President Trump will do is a big risk, I would say. However, I'm reading in between the lines, and I'm also hearing the music. And the music says that there's a lot of American forces here in the region that have been mobilized from other locations. For example, the Indo-Pacific after the operation in Venezuela, and also from other areas as well. If I'm also further zooming out and looking at the countries surrounding Israel, then I see additional American forces in Jordan, in Bahrain, and other countries as well. So basically, what President Trump is trying to convey is that we are here, We have the full power. We're ready to act. But now the question of the but can go a few ways. One but can go to a full military action, attack, operation in Iran. But here we are not clear about the goal. While Israel's ultimate vision, I would say, with Iran is to take down the regime, I'm not sure the American has the same kind of goal. The second but can also go to a negotiation, because we heard recently Witkoff saying that he texts often with the foreign minister of Iran, exchanging messages about a possible negotiation, a possible discussion. So both buts are currently on the table. But one thing is clear. Should the American choose to launch a major operation in Gaza towards the Revolutionary Guards...
I'm sorry, towards Iran. Towards Iran.
Iran. Yeah.
Towards Iran, of course, then they're ready. They have the capabilities, they're ready. In the meantime, until this happens, I have to say, Kalev, I'm surprised at the sleepiness I see all over the world with watching the horrible pictures from Iran. I mean, I think that the Western countries, wherever they are, should expel immediately the Iranian ambassadors from their territory following this very murderous attack we've been seeing for the last couple of weeks in Iran.
Right, certainly it's horrific. Doron, if Iran does retaliate against Israel, and it's clearly said it will, how far should Israel go? Should it go all out in the hopes, perhaps, of weakening the regime and aiding the U.S. to perhaps it's seeing it toppled?
I don't think the game against Iran is run by Israel right now. It's run by the U.S. So basically, we have to be at sync with the U.S. in terms of every move that we make. And of course, we don't need to go into any preemptive attacks, but of course, we have to be very prepared to be attacked in case President Trump decides to act. And then, of course, if the U.S. would ask us to participate, of course, we can do it, but I don't think they will in this context right now. I want to remind us the Gulf War of the 90s, early 90s, the same scenario when Iraq is being attacked, the missiles are shot into Israel, and then we were not allowed to participate. Me as a deputy commander of the unit, I wasn't allowed to participate in preempting those launchers from Iraq. So I would think the game is run by the US. This is a clear case. And we have to play along and see what's up. Of course, everybody wants to see the regime change. We and the U.S. The question is what kind of active steps we can take, what kind of attack, if there will be an attack, would be deployed, would it be an enormous attack, would it be a targeted attack, what would be the consequences? And of course, we have also to take into account that there can be a chain reaction that we can't foresee. So it's a gamble. It's a very serious gamble and a very major decision that the U.S. President have to make.
All right, some fateful days ahead. Avital Leibovich, Doron Avital, thank you for joining us on ILTV.
Thank you.
And we've got some exciting news. You can now get Israel updates on our WhatsApp channel, breaking stories, live updates, and verified reports, all delivered fast and accurate. Just scan the QR code on your screen to join.
For more than 200 years, when Israel's most vulnerable needed help, Kolel Chabad was there. When families can't afford food, when seniors are alone, when children are struggling to survive, Kolel Chabad steps in with meals, essentials, and dignity. Right now, thousands of families across Israel are counting on that help, and you can make sure it reaches them. Your donation doesn't just give charity, it gives hope, it gives strength, it saves lives. Kolel Chabad, helping Israel one life at a time. Scan the QR code on your screen and give now.
Imagine earning your master's degree on top of Mount Carmel, where forest meets sea and where every day brings a new cultural, academic, and personal adventure. This is the multi-experience at U Haifa International. Here, students from around the world live and learn together in Israel's most culturally diverse city, meeting new people, discovering new perspectives, and shaping their own Israel experience.
There's people from different countries, from different religions and different languages. Somehow we are all very similar.
At U Haifa Haifa, academics meet real life. You don't just study, you experience Israel up close, explore Haifa's mountain ocean city life, and build global friendships that last a lifetime.
It's not just a degree, it's an experience. It opens your mind, your network, and your world.
U Haifa International. Master your mind, live your Israel experience.
Three citizens were detained today in Baku after Azerbaijani security forces foiled a planned terror attack targeting the Israeli embassy there. This a day after Foreign Minister Gideon Saar's visit to the site. The suspects were reportedly linked to an ISIS terror cell in Azerbaijan, according to local security officials. The three were arrested as they approached the area of the embassy while preparing to carry out an attack motivated by religious hostility. The exact timing of the arrest was not disclosed, though authorities said the operation took place recently. The investigation is still ongoing. Today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and among the events taking place is a global gathering in Jerusalem, warning that anti-Semitism is once again a threat to Jews and the free world. ILTV's Lidar Grav Lazi is co-hosting the second day of the conference, and our Mayan Hoffman was there yesterday and filed this report.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu walked on stage in Jerusalem last night with a warning and a challenge, saying a World War Jew ideology is now targeting the Jewish people and the Western world at large.
And they agree on one thing. What is the thing that they agree on? World War Jew. To conduct a world war, first against the Jews and against the Jewish state.
Netanyahu spoke Monday night at a gala marking the opening of the second International Conference on Combating Anti-Semitism, a two-day event bringing hundreds of leaders, lawmakers, diplomats, and civil society figures from around the world to Jerusalem. The conference, initiated by Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism Minister Amichai Shikli, comes as Jewish communities worldwide face the highest levels of anti-Semitism seen since the Holocaust. Events continued Tuesday, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, with panels and closed sessions at the Jerusalem International Convention Center. At the heart of Monday night's gala was a special government award presented to Leo Terrell, senior counsel and chair of the U.S. Department of Justice Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism.
It's not a game, it's not a play. You are fighting with your soul, with all your heart. And I think the entire Jewish people and the people here in Israel, we all can feel your heart beating with us.
Terrell, speaking at a press conference ahead of the ceremony, said his commitment to the fight is both personal and long-term.
Fighting anti-Semitism is not a Jewish issue. It's not an American issue. It's a Western civilization issue.
Terrell, a civil rights attorney for more than 3 decades, said he was asked by U.S. President Donald Trump to leave Fox News and take on the role, with a clear mandate to use every legal tool available to combat anti-Semitism. In response to a question from ILTV about the line between free speech and incitement, Terrell stressed that words become a federal issue when they turn into action.
Speech alone, without criminal or misconduct, it's not illegal. So you're asking me that hate crime speech leads to crime. If a crime is committed with words and conduct, the Trump administration will take the appropriate legal action.
The conference was not just about statements, but about building connections between countries dealing with similar threats. Participants met earlier on Monday at the Knesset, discussing legislation, education, foreign interference, and the need for coordinated responses to incitement and violence.
To connect in between those leaders, from Cyprus to Romania, Albania, Italia, Canada, Australia, all together to have a discussion like we had today in the Knesset, so people get to know one another, and we are building networks.
Others said the fact that so many leaders gathered in Jerusalem was a sign of momentum.
It's kind of the worst nightmare for the anti-Semites around the world, because we're actually sitting together, conspiring together for good.
The story of the Jewish people has never been about standing still.
It's a story of moving forward, of taking responsibility, of protecting what matters, no matter the challenge. That story is still being written today, not with swords, but with stewardship of the land, with the rule of law, and with the determination to secure Israel's future. And on the front lines of that mission stands Regavim. Regavim is a public movement dedicated to defending Israel's national lands and natural resources in the field, in the courts, and in the public square. Through research, on-the-ground action, and legal advocacy, Regavim works to uphold the rule of law and to ensure that Israel can grow, thrive, and remain rooted in its homeland.
And let's take a look at the weather. Israel awoke to a new reality today. For the first time in years, there are no Israelis being held hostage in Gaza, following yesterday's return of the body of Master Sergeant Ron Gvili. He was the last Israeli held captive in Gaza from the October 7th terror attack. We'll have more on that later. But first, some major developing news. The U.S. is building up its military presence in the region as Trump and his advisors weigh all possible actions to take against the Islamic regime in Iran. More on this from ILTV's Devo Klein.
The United States continues its military buildup in the region ahead of a possible action against the Islamic regime in Iran. The USS aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln and its accompanying strike force is reportedly now in Mideast waters within striking distance of Iran. President Trump and his closest advisors are still weighing their next steps and waiting to see if the Iranian regime is prepared to negotiate with Washington on its terms. The New York Times reporting today that Trump has received multiple intelligence reports indicating that the Ayatollah's regime is now at its weakest point since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, after weeks of street protests and a brutal crackdown in which security forces gunned down and arrested tens of thousands of demonstrators. In an interview with Axios, Trump said that Iran wants to make a deal and has called on numerous occasions to do so, after he sent, quote, an armada bigger than the U.S. deployed against Venezuela. But the regime publicly still remains defiant, with top officials threatening total war against the U.S. and Israel if it is attacked. Within Iran, the regime continues its brutal campaign against dissenters, with reports that security forces have been entering hospitals to drag protesters who were injured during the demonstrations out of their sickbeds.
Lately, I've been receiving many reports of security forces, including plainclothes security forces going into hospitals to identify protesters, but also to detain them. And I think, and that has been reported, again, not just in one province, but in multiple provinces. And I think this creates a really chilling effect. I mean, medical facilities needs to be a safe place for everyone. And I think what this is happening as a result of this is that wounded protesters are choosing not to seek medical attention. And I think that would inevitably result in further deaths and injuries that really need to be treated.
Meanwhile, Israel continues to prepare for an Iranian retaliation following a potential U.S. strike. The tourism ministry has announced that it has a plan to quickly evacuate some 42,000 tourists currently in Israel if the Iranians should strike, as Israelis prepare to hunker down for another possible conflict.
Now, a moment of closure for Israel. The IDF has confirmed that the remains of Ron Gvili, the last hostage from October 7th, have been found and identified and returned to Israel for burial. Gvili was killed in battle during the Hamas attacks and abducted into Gaza. His recovery ends the final unresolved case from that day. ILTV's India Naftali is at Hostages Square with all the details. India?
Thank you, Kalev. I'm standing here at Hostages Square. It's a place that's become a symbol of pain, waiting, and hope for more than 2 years. I've been reporting from the square since the first weeks after October 7th, and today, for the very first time in over a decade, Israel has no remaining hostages in Gaza. People are removing their yellow hostage pins. Many vowed to keep them on until everyone came home, and that moment finally came with the return of Ron Gvili. The Israel Defense Forces confirmed Monday that the remains of 24-year-old police officer Ron Gvili have been identified and returned to Israel for burial. The hostages into battle, fighting at the entrance to Kibbutz Halomim until his ammunition ran out. The recovery operation for his body, named Courageous Heart, was based on precise intelligence that his body was buried in a cemetery in eastern Gaza City. New details released by the Shin Bet revealed that the breakthrough came after a Palestinian Islamic Jihad operative was captured and interrogated last month. He admitted to moving Gavili's body between locations and provided information that led to the exact burial site. Forensic teams examined nearly 250 bodies before identifying Gavili's remains. Prime Minister Netanyahu announced his return yesterday.
אני שמח לבשר לאזרחי ישראל, לעם ישראל, כפי שבישרתי עכשיו למשפחת גבילי, כוחותינו מצאו את רני, והוא כרגע בדרך הביתה. זה הישג בלתי רגיל של מדינת ישראל. אנחנו הבטחנו, אני הבטחתי, להחזיר את כולם. החזרנו את כולם, עד האחרון שבהם. רני, גיבור ישראל, נכנס ראשון, יצא אחרון, הוא שב הביתה. הישג כביר לצבא ההגנה לישראל, למדינת ישראל, וגם לאזרחי ישראל, שאתם נתתם לנו את הגיבוי להשלים את המלאכה. רני חוזר הביתה.
Now that he is home, all of Israel is reacting, particularly his family, who has long awaited